This is Savage Annie with Into the Pit with Annie. I'm here with Adam and Kyle from Vitriol. How are you guys doing tonight?
Feel good.
These guys just raged on stage and they finally got some time to breathe. So last time we spoke was at Las Vegas Death Fest, the last time you guys were in this exact same venue. And you guys played on the other stage. What has the experience been like since you guys came to Vegas, and what is it like to be back?
Man, I mean, this show specifically, it's funny, I didn't appreciate how symbolic this show was until I was actually on stage. I think the second song in, and I realized, I was like, oh fuck. Not only had we played here, but this was our first out-of-town show right when Vitriol was picking up steam as a live entity. And man, before that show, I was this close to puking from being just so fucking nervous, you know. And to go from like almost, how long ago was that?
That was in June.
Months ago or something?
Yeah.
So like 6-7 months.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, it's not even that long. Fuck. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, it hasn't been a very long time.
Jesus, yeah. It was.
Hello
again. It's been death metal boot camp, you know, for the last 6 months. So to go from, you know, and I've had some health stuff that some people know about that I've been bouncing back from, you know, trying to put on weight, stuff like that. So it's not only been us honing our skills on the road as a band, but also, you know, just becoming a healthier person. How the place I was in my mind and in my body 6 months ago compared to now is pretty crazy. And it's great to be playing later on the big stage.
Yeah, nice. So what has it been like to be touring with Niall and Hate Eternal around Europe, of all places?
It's pretty incredible. I mean, we always talked about, you know, when we sign a deal and get out there and start doing touring and stuff, how great it would be to one day tour with Niall or tour with Hate Eternal. And to be able to play with both of those bands and in Europe for our first actual tour was just...
That was your first tour, period, as a band?
For Vitriol, yes.
Damn.
So yeah, it was. We were incredibly fortunate and very grateful to be a part of that, and it was fantastic. We got to share a bus with those guys and really get to know, you know, our heroes and find out just like how down to earth they really actually were, and you know, finally get to meet them and just hope they're not a bunch of assholes.
Yeah. So the tour met your expectations as far as touring with bigger bands.
It exceeded expectations. To
awesome.
Say the least. It was a really awesome time, and the reception of Vitriol over in Europe was also fantastic. So yeah, I mean, I just can't say enough about it. It was a great way to kick things off for this band.
What was the best part of touring versus the worst part of touring for you guys?
In Europe specifically? Or
just in general.
Oh, Jesus.
Like, was there one thing that you were like, I fucking hate this particular thing?
I mean, I don't think this is particularly unique to us, but I think privacy is always high in demand on tour. And we're a band.
Just monopolize that bathroom.
We're a band. I mean, it's just specifically alone time, you know, and we're a band that comprised of individuals that require a good deal of it to remain happy and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So not being able to have alone time is, for me, the worst part. I'm fine sleeping in vans, I'm fine driving. Well, I haven't driven much this tour, but just not being able to get away is the worst part for me.
Yeah.
What was the best part?
Oh, that's so hard. I mean, specifically, just talking about the European tour, I want to chime in that one of the most rewarding aspects of that tour for me was realizing that as a musician and someone that is really passionate about the stuff that I make, to meet Eric Rutan of Hate Eternal and Carl Sanders and Niall, and to see them in their 40s and 50s, respectively, still just as excited as a 17-year-old, like, about death metal and shit, you know what I mean? And it was like, that's the elixir, you know what I mean? It's like the guys are still out there making relevant music, or they're making relevant music because they still give a shit.
Yeah, Niall just dropped a new album this
great.
month.
It's great. So
I think it's sick.
Yeah, I mean, it was, as a band, it couldn't have been a better first tour between the bands that deeply affected Vitriol's, fundamental sound, getting that validation, getting them as fans and friends, and again, just kind of being able to see 20 years into the future and being like, hey, these are guys have been doing 20, 30 years, and they're still loving it. So I'm just like, man, fuck yeah. Like you always worry, like you hear the horror stories about people getting old and bitter and shit like that, and it's nice to know that you don't have to. It's a choice. So choose not to.
Now, for you, what was the worst part of touring? Was it also lack of privacy?
The privacy was definitely wore on me a little bit, but it was interesting. It was probably one of the best things and worst things simultaneously was loading in and out every night. So over in Europe, there's a lot of 2-story and 3-story buildings, and their buildings aren't up to code the way they are here in the States. So loading in the entire tour's equipment was really hard and taxing, but at the same time, it was like the best exercise I got all day. So I was thankful to have it, but it was something I bitched about while doing it, but appreciated
work off
it
that
later.
tour food, bro.
Yeah. That's I don't know. I guess the first thing that comes to mind when I think about it a little bit harder.
So what venue had the most stairs you had to climb?
It may have been the very first one in Warsaw.
Yeah.
Where we kicked the tour off.
Poland likes their stairs.
Yeah, and then on top of that, like the green room was like 2 stories above like the main room, so we're running around, we're trying to get merch set up for the first night of tour and changing strings and trying to find our green room and stuff, and then we're just trying to find catering, and we're just running up and down these stairs all damn day. So I got a lot of exercise that day, but it was great. I wouldn't have it any other way, really.
Nice. So European tour specific, what was your favorite country to visit? Whether it was just doing touristy stuff, which I'm sure you didn't have a lot of time to do, or like just the venue and the atmosphere itself.
Poland's my favorite, for sure.
I definitely enjoyed Poland a lot. Surprisingly, I actually liked UK a lot. I figured, being fucking England Junior over here, that it wouldn't be all that different, but it actually is. I love the sarcastic, smart-ass humor of people in the UK, and I actually really enjoyed the UK. We had some great shows up there, Glasgow, Manchester, and we played London as well. I think London was our biggest show of the tour.
Those were the best shows.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
All right, well, let's get to the album. You guys released it a month earlier than you originally told me. You said October, you released that shit in September. And the thing is a wild ride. The thing is awesome. Like, you guys put some fucking mad awesome shit into that.
Thanks.
We haven't written our review yet, but it's coming.
Awesome.
Busy woman. But so what has the fan reaction been to it? Like, how's it been received by like music critics and fans alike? Like,
it's been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, there were certain things I knew making the choices, the aesthetic choices with the production were going to raise some eyebrows. I mean, especially this early on when people don't really know what Vitriol is. You know what I mean? Whereas people might casually interact with Vitriol and hear the guitars are doing a lot of stuff, the drums are going fast, they're like, okay, this is like a tech death band or whatever, right? So, and then you release an album that sounds a little more akin to traditional death metal sonically, and the kids that are expecting more of a modern, what they're used to hearing, the low, thunderous kicks and all that stuff. And if it's not that, they're like, why isn't it that? So, generally, that's been the most fun for me, because the people that get it, the people that know what we're going for, especially, the kick tone and all that, they really appreciate kind of the torch we're trying to carry and what we're harkening back to sonically with that. But yeah, I mean, the critical response has been. It's weird. It's a weird question to answer because I feel like I'm bragging. Like I don't want to be like, you know what I mean? Like I'm comfortable.
Hey, you
like,
put out this awesome body of work. You're allowed to brag a little bit.
I mean, the reviews have been consistently very solid. You know, we have a lot. Metal Hammer in Greece. We had a guy that reached out to us, and he's been writing for Metal Hammer for years, and he said that it was the highest rating he's ever given an album ever. So that was just that kind of stuff. But honestly, for me, it's not just a line. For me, just making the album everything I wanted it to be, which it is validating for me. And then people that have been in the shit for 20 plus years. Like the most validating thing for me outside of critics or honestly general fans are the lifers, you know, the guys that have been watching Deicide and Immolation and all these bands coming out and doing the thing. And when those guys come up to you and they're like, I haven't been excited about a new death metal band in 20 fucking years. Yeah. There's nothing more validating than that.
Yes.
There's nothing more validating than that. So it's like, and for me, approaching death metal like a craft and caring so much about the legacy of the culture, that's what is the most touching for me, is like having those guys that are in it, you know, giving us their seal of approval. So, and we've been getting a lot of that. That's been putting a lot of wind in our sails.
So let's talk like lyrical content. Like, what was kind of the story behind a lot of the lyrics? I mean, obviously the album title, "To Bathe in the Throat of Cowardice," like it's a pretty bold statement. And so like a lot of the lyrics kind of touch on things that like I kind of interpret as like a fight or fail type of aspect of like proving like that you're gonna make it no matter what and step on whoever you need to get there. But like, I want to hear it in your words, like as far as like what went into this, like what life experience or like thought or idea kind of molded this and shaped this into what it is.
That's a cool insight, actually. And I like that when people perceive some duality, because I think that's what, I mean, a really rewarding conversation I had with Eric Rutan of Hate Eternal, because he also has like, there's a lot of, it's not just anger, it's anger that stems from a lot of pain. And the people that share that experience usually can glean that from reading lyrics or even listening to vocal performances and whatnot. It's hard. The lyrics, there was never really a plan for what the lyrics for the band would be, because I wanted whatever I wrote about to be honest, and it's hard to just decide what's honest to you. And I free write a lot, so not all the shit I write is that hostile or bleak or whatever. So whenever I write something that is kind of in the voice of Vitriol, that's when I'm like, all right, this can work. I'll usually just have like a specific idea or whatever. But you know, without going into explicitly, you know, personal backstories, you know, there's as much. I've used the term abjection a lot when talking about the theme of our lyrics, because I think that was the hardest question I was posed with when the interview started coming in. I was like, fuck it, because I never really thought much. I just wrote them, right? You know, it's like I didn't have like a game plan, and it's not just an outward hostility; it's also an inward hostility. It's identifying a lot of personal weaknesses and directing that. Kind of having to manifest your own disciplinarian. You know what I mean? Because not all of us have someone to teach us how to live and live correctly.
So is that what Pain Will Define Their Death was like mainly about? Because like so my favorite stanza, and I'm just gonna read it, is a hammer to crash through what is to be human, wield it with contempt or have it torn from your arms. we are the wolves chewing at the ankles of the world. And that's kind of where I got a lot of that theme from that album from. I drew from that, like that speaks to a lot of people.
Yeah. There are people that I heard an interesting insight from my partner at home when they said that people that were raised on love see the world differently than people that were raised on survival.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a simple wisdom, but that like fucking fucked me up, man. Because it was like, you can kind of see, you can so easily compartmentalize people into those places, and the world presents different rules for different people depending on what you're born into.
Yeah.
And some people want to ignore that. They'll call it privilege, they'll call it whatever. But it's, you deal with the cards that you're dealt, and some people have to be put in a position where, in order to maintain, it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a lot of sink or swim instances to, keep going. So that's primarily, I think, what a lot of, it's funny because the earlier lyrics deal with a lot more internal stuff,
mm-hmm.
and the later lyrics become a little more external. And it's, so yeah, there is this duality of inward and outward, and I think that's important to identify.
Well, obviously, lyrics aren't the only thing that emanate emotion in music. So as far as guitar parts and the drum parts, like, was there anything that went into that emotionally for you guys on top of the lyrical content?
Yeah, I mean, lyrics are done a little bit later in the songwriting process.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like lyrics are written and then we write music according to the way that makes us feel. At least not for me. He writes all the lyrics, so maybe a little different for Kyle. But for me, I just understand the general, theme behind Vitriol, and I just put a lot of aggression and just frustration into my instrument, and I'm just trying to vent it out through that. So a lot of the chord plucks that I'm pulling, I'm trying to rip the fucking strings off my bass and stuff, and I'm trying to just like smash through this thing, and it's just how I exercise the things that frustrate me in a productive way.
I think what took Vitriol so long to become something that was ready to be what it is now was finding that an instrumental sound that reflected what I was trying to communicate. And it was that was the most difficult thing, because it was, Adam can recall years of me, it sounds too happy, it sounds too this, it sounds too uplifting, it's too, that's too fucking,
He's the Debbie
that's
Downer.
too fun. Yeah. Just fucking, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Suck the life out of everything, there's no, early on, I made the decision that there was going to be no dynamic in terms of attitude. Vitriol has one fucking mission statement, and we have a lot of ways to execute that, but having that focused, we're just gonna breathe fire and hate 100% of the time, and there's a lot of ways to do that, so that keeps it interesting for us. But we had no interest in pulling punches, that has a lot to do with the album title. I wanted that to be, it's very reflective of my personal journey and the band's, but it's also, I wanted an album title that was as bold as the music that was on it.
Nice. Now, your initial tour, obviously, is under your belt now for the new album, and you guys have a couple of videos out, so what is next for Vitriol?
We are going back out on a tour that's not announced yet, but it's going to be in February.
Yes, we have
I can say that.
a U.S. run, and then we
Yeah.
have Christian gruesome run in Europe in March and April that has been announced. And we're currently working on stuff in the summer, so
Yeah,
it's going to be a very busy 2020 for us.
Nice.
big plans in the summer, trying to do some big shows that are hopefully will be announced soon.
So 2021, you guys going back in the studio? Gonna write some more stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
No pressure.
No, I mean definitely. I mean, I would honestly be surprised if it took me that long to start
Nice.
writing stuff.
Awesome.
And who knows? I don't know if that's going to be a full length or an EP or what, you know. But I certainly don't want to slow down that way. And I still have a lot of ideas. So it's
Awesome.
just happy to
Well.
have to say honestly.
That is all the questions I had for you guys. Thank you so much for doing this again.
Oh, thank you for dealing with my rambling.
I love your rambling.
My
It's
style.
great.
My
It's the
style
best
of
stuff ever.
Narrative, yeah.
Should butter that on bread or something. But this has been Savage Annie with Into the Pit. This has been Kyle and Adam from Vitriol, and we're out.